Good.
All right, Two Kings Challenge. We are back after a 1 week break, which we will touch on just a little bit. But I'm Frank McFarland here with Brian King, and we are not on our usual day. We are coming to you on Friday, which we are off. The offices are closed today, and I am here with two toddlers running around upstairs. They're currently planted in front of the TV, so hopefully there will not be too many interruptions from them, but if there are, we will make it part of the show here as we move forward today.
Well, happy Good Friday to everybody. We're really pumped up. We skipped last week because we were in the Big Apple for an in-person convention. It was nice to be able to see some of our friends from across the country, some firms that we work with. Got to go to a very interesting summit, and love to be able to chat a little bit about that. And we got some exciting news in our offices and some more growth at King Law. So why don't you kick us off, Frank?
Yeah, I think that is a good place to start with what we have been doing, over the last week or so. So on Wednesday last week, Brian and I hopped on a plane. We cozied up, nice and snug next to each other, and took that
Coach
short
for us, huh?
Yeah, and we went up to New York City. I think for both of us, there was, there has been some of that I think we have touched on in our shows, but you kind of have these moments where you are inspired, you are recharged, and that's what a lot of this this show, this these videos or podcasts have been for us. At the start especially, and then you can kind of hear it. There's times where it funnels back out, and then times where it goes back up. I think what New York was for me more than anything else was a nice chance to hit the reset button and recharge some. But we were also able to get some absolutely fantastic information, and some of it not necessarily from other people, some of it more just the ability to talk things out with other, kind of like-minded peers, and hear their thoughts is definitely a way to, kind of renew where, what you may already know is the right way to go, but kind of, hear that from somebody else, and then also hear it out of your own mouth, which I think reinforces it too. So I think that, first and foremost was the biggest part for me. But what were some of your takeaways? We can touch on some more of the details too.
Well, I love New York, first of all, and love to be able to spend some time there. It's nice to come back to North Carolina when you're finished, but there's something about that city that just brings some energy to you, knowing there's so much going on, and you see these huge Fortune 500 companies as you're driving around and seeing headquarters after headquarters, and you realize that what a tiny piece of the puzzle our law firm is, but at the same time, that every one of those started with a group of people who are excited, and those teams put together, and really drives America. And I love being there. Well, our meetings were great. It was really just one case analyzing after another of other firms. And when you start getting yourself in the mindset of like, okay, let me put my problems away. Let me hear what's going on with another firm. And I would hope if somebody's listening to this that they're doing the same thing. They're kind of seeing like, okay, what are we going through? And it's a lot easier sometimes to diagnose somebody else's issues. And when you get in that mind frame, it starts revealing like, that's the kind of things going on with me. And New York definitely did that for us. We started on Thursday with an all-day, just deep dive into a personal injury firm in Florida that is going through tremendous growth. They have a lot of things that are similar to what we do, a lot of things that are different than what we do. And I thought it was very interesting for us just to hear some of the things that that firm, not just the firm principal, but also their general manager, some of the teams that they work with, that they put together. And it was very interesting for me to hear that. What I, some of my immediate takeaways is It's amazing to hear a firm that is not much bigger than ours that is using spending $3 million on trying to obtain new clients, and using that kind of numbers to get less than 800 clients for the year, because they're very specific about what they're trying to accomplish and what they're trying to get. Very interesting for me to hear that, what they're doing for referral sources, gifts, having an employee who essentially is a gift giver. That's what she did. And some things like that. That's a little outside the box for us, but makes me think, hey, that's some things that'd be interesting. So day one was a lot of that for me.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think some of that carries over. You have, this firm in particular, huge personal injury practice. They're carrying a lot of, high dollar cases, which is pretty much, the only thing that they were taking on. But we didn't get a chance to break down their books or anything like that. But what you assume is similar size overall. Probably similar, kind of revenue, similar kind of profits, all those kind of things, but just a very, very different way to get there. And it's interesting because I know a lot of what we deal with, there's some intriguing parts to that, when it comes to, getting to the same amount of money with 9 attorneys or whatever versus what we do with 40 attorneys. So, I think it just shows there's a lot of ways that you can run a law practice successfully. But it also shows that there are areas to grow in. There are ways to do this differently. One of the things that I found one of my biggest takeaways, obviously, was just how much a lot of other firms put into their, what we would call non-billable staff. For them, that may include, all kinds of different positions that they have. But this team that they put together, and a lot of these other firms that, we have a very, very good team too. It's just that, in terms of their number percentage wise would be a lot greater in terms of the overall firm capacity. But it was interesting. It was really, really eye opening. And, again, like you said, I thought the marketing piece was a big, big, thing that I would say, yeah, maybe our referrals are not $15,000 on average, per case, but it's the same concept, referral sources and kind of this grassroots marketing that we've talked about, the old school marketing that we talked about a lot at the start of this show, and how it may impact Charlotte and Asheville. And I think it has in both cases some. But those parts that we don't even think a lot about in our more, our kind of core offices right now, because it's sort of been ingrained into what we do, and there are those relationships there. But putting that extra effort in those things is a way to grow, to grow our practice areas, to grow our overall caseload. And really, I think there are leaks there that we could get to, I think, with more time spent in some of those more true, kind of that old school marketing methods that, like I said, I know we've touched on here some too, but another way that we could do that and continue to grow in some of these newer markets like Asheville and Charlotte.
Yeah, it really is interesting when you can kind of hear it, because day two, it was our firm on the chopping block. We got to present and kind of a lot of back and forth with some of the attorneys that I consider mentors, and not just mentors from a law standpoint, but from a business standpoint. People who have really done it. A group of attorneys in Las Vegas that had bought out their partners. They were a second generation of attorneys who have just done incredible work on what's going on there. An attorney who's kind of where we all want to be, who is moving into retirement. And just hearing some of the concepts that he had, not just diagnosing with us, but with other firms, and saying things like, well, maybe you're going to have to get back into the fray a little bit. and leading on the front line. And then we made a point to make sure all of our time was profitable and learning, even going out to eat, having discussions and saying like, okay, what does that balance of life look like for you? What are you doing? How are you recruiting? Right now we're dealing with a very tight market where there's a lot of employment engagement. How do you get those people in? And then how do you make sure that the firm culture that you've put together, the habits, the processes are going to be protected? So all of that made New York just a great trip for me. I think I came back really rejuvenated and reminding of like what's our basics. We've had a successful year last year. What made it a successful year, and what can we do to replicate that? So and really just kind of enjoying that success. And then we're able to get on the granular level and talk a little bit about Asheville and Charlotte and some of the things that we're wanting to do there. So let's sort of transition it over to that.
Yeah, and I agree with all of what you said there. I mean, I think that the way that, I don't know, just being able to soak up that information and those different perspectives and all that part, like I said, I think it was definitely, like I mentioned before, it was a recharge and it was a lot of good information there. There were some specifics. I'll touch on one of those because I want to, we talked about discussing kind of, we've had a lot of talks about social media, but again, kind of point to some of the specifics there. And I think, we could label this kind of as more technology related too. One of the things that we heard that was more specific in New York, and I think has an impact on what we're doing, probably the way our online marketing campaigns are working in Asheville and Charlotte, I think is heavily dependent on one thing that we talked about there, which is some of these local services changes with Google and some of the way that might impact us and how it may be a benefit to us in some ways. And I don't want to get too technical in the weeds because I don't understand them, but I did want to touch on this briefly because this may be something that other people, are going through. And one of, probably the biggest takeaway was apparently there is the ability to get a map that shows kind of where you are on the local services rankings. And again, just to go into that a little bit, if you search for something on Google, like, let's say family law attorney in Shelby, you'll get a number of different results. There will be ads. Those are paid engagements that are more specific. But then there's also what they have is a little local services bubble, which is, the top so many in that area that has been Google verified, or I don't know all the details, but whatever that is and however that works, which is also a little bit of a paid thing, but it's much less expensive than what we deal with on an AdWords campaign and all those parts. Apparently all that has changed. And, I know that one thing for us is going to be figuring out how the heck, how the heck we fit into that and what we can do to make it better. And apparently office location became a lot more valuable, and it's a lot harder for kind of your big dogs in these bigger markets like Asheville and Charlotte to continue to dominate, which I think is good for us, but it may also be a negative in some of our other markets too. So I think there is a window there that Google has opened for us. And, I think exploiting that, or exploiting may not be the exact right word, but to be able to take advantage of that, I think could be a key. And I know that's a small technical piece, but I just thought it was worth mentioning because I think it relates directly to Asheville and Charlotte, because you might have, if you look at Charlotte as a whole, maybe we're popping up, kind of in those areas where our office is, and then maybe, we're way down at the bottom on these other ends. But where those locations are, kind of the thought of, it kind of brings back up the thought of maybe having satellite spots around. Not that that's what we're going to do, but those kind of ideas may make a difference, in where you're showing up on these rankings.
Yeah, it really is amazing when you think of those the analytics, because Google is still such a driving force in our industry. But they change that algorithm so often, and it seems like, despite the concept of people fleeing a little bit of the cities and different things like that, that it's still geographically based, and that was interesting to me to see what that looks like, and really takes it at a granular level of how and what do we want our clients to look like, and if that's what we want, how can we get them to come to our office? And to do that in an environment where right now, overall, our firm has again really exceeded expectations. Last month was by a pretty good margin, the best month that the law office has ever had. And it really is frustrating for us because we see so many different problems and things we're trying to fix, and some of the growth and how frustrating that can be. That it's kind of crazy to stop for a moment and see the successes that we've had. So I, I really think that getting some deeper insight on that marketing goes a long way, and it really opens up the door for us. And think in a city like Charlotte or like Asheville, where in Asheville I'm looking at a possible move in location. Well, the city is, it's not like that they just go by a city center. In a place like Charlotte, they're going to identify, well, what towns are you around? What areas are you around? And where we are in Charlotte, we went from somewhat outside of that city center to now we are right in the middle of it, where probably our competition is spending a good bit of money. And in Asheville right now, we're in more of a again outside that city center. We're very near the Biltmore House. For any of you around the Asheville area, the entryway to the Biltmore House in just outside of Biltmore Village, and that's a different kind of Asheville than what it would be if we decided, hey, let's go right downtown, let's go right beside the courthouse, let's get into that fray, which might be convenient for us, but may change what our algorithm looks like in terms of Asheville. So I'm curious as to that, and you don't want to make too big of decision making because just as it was clear, Google could change their analytics tomorrow, and you've done a lot of work to try to get ready for what would have helped a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it could make a difference in some of that, new location planning and stuff like that. But you're exactly right on that. I just think it's interesting to note, and one of the points, and we probably spent too much time on it already, but talk about LinkedIn a little bit. I know we haven't really discussed LinkedIn, but while we're on the tech side, I think that is worth bringing up. We've talked about other social media, and I may want to give a TikTok shout out again at some point today, but talk on LinkedIn a little bit.
LinkedIn is my favorite social media platform. I know we've talked a lot about TikTok because it's been so interesting. LinkedIn, though, is a completely different audience. When I'm going into LinkedIn, my number one goal of that is to engage possible candidates, employment candidates for King Law Offices. That's what I spend a lot of my time on, is firm building and growth and development. LinkedIn is the perfect platform for that. It cuts out a lot of the fat. You're not going to see, or at least I can't imagine LinkedIn is going to let you post things like what I ate for dinner or those kind of things. There's other social medias for that. This is very oriented to the law student who wants a job or an employee who is interested in getting a job. So we try to focus things on that. It's also the format that I've put these videos on, and we've had over 2,000 hits on the Two King Challenge over just what we've posted, and I've slow posted that. So it's fascinating that in I think 3 or 4 videos we've gotten that kind of interaction, because I know I know my connections on there. it's lawyers, it's law firms, and that's a really good connection for that. And but LinkedIn also, when we presented there in New York, I snapped a picture of us in front of the World Trade Center. That's an incredible place to go if you've not been. It was really emotional, even these many years later, 20 years later, to see some of the things that they have there in New York. But I just snapped a picture and just put in what we were doing and being motivated. I think that was 1,500 hits on that one. It's not something you post on every day, but it is something that we try to share our vision, try to get people excited, and frankly, it's resulted in several of our hires coming from that. And I think it's a really good group. And if you're watching this right now through LinkedIn, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, it's an interesting point, and I have never been big on LinkedIn. You know that. I mean, I'm on there. I have I have some connections, but that is not something that I've used in any major way. But I think that one of the parts about like LinkedIn for you, and I know LinkedIn has definitely become more. It's that's not a personal social media, and I know LinkedIn is used more uh, from a business standpoint, but it's a similar concept in that these are people that you have personally connected with. We're not talking about this is just being shot out into space, and whoever's watching it is watching it. Like even maybe our firm Facebook page is, definitely the TikTok pages are, the YouTube channel. Like you don't really know who's getting access to that, but when it comes to LinkedIn, it's so targeted towards, like, what it is. It's lawyers and it's, law school students and, or other professionals that, you've met, personally in our areas. Maybe there's some that spread out a little bit, but, all those kind of things. I don't think that we do enough of that, period. I mean, like, I don't know how many friends on Facebook I have. It's thousands, How much would we pay to directly target thousands of people in our general areas, every day? I mean, that's worth real money to us. And I don't know that I've ever made a post on my personal Facebook page, that's like that. And I'm not saying to spam, that we should be spamming our personal pages or anything like that. I just think that there are ways that we could utilize these things more than what we're doing now. And I'll seg that into TikTok because I have built up a pretty decent following, on TikTok of people that are interacting with my videos and, all that. They're from all different parts of the country, though, there's no real geographic tie. But those videos that I've spent a lot of time making, and, again, that's been a roller coaster too, because there's been times where I've been, more frustrated with it, and times where I'm back on the train, like right now, because I'm having a lot of success with them. But that's one of those things where, when you make, at least part of this with TikTok is when the people that are watching it have the ability to connect with you, it's going to increase that interaction. It's going to increase the following. It's going to increase all those parts. There are ready-made ways to use those videos in a more targeted way that we have. Maybe not the specific videos, but that concept, I think, translates over, onto our Facebook pages. Maybe it's, maybe there's a need for more Facebook pages. Maybe there's a need for more of these things. But, when we talk about moving into a market like Charlotte or the general area, that the general areas that we are in, I do think it's going to take, some level of concerted effort on some of these things. Maybe not that it requires it, but if you're using those things, these are people that I know are within an hour of Charlotte. 2/3 of those 3,000 friends that I have on Facebook are going to be within an hour of Charlotte. So they're going to know people in Charlotte. They're going to have friends that are there, and just having that ability. I think it's an interesting concept and one that we won't be able to fully flesh out in 90 days. But in the same way that LinkedIn is able to do that for our hiring, and I think probably has made a difference in hiring for both Charlotte and Asheville, in some way or another, even if it's just a connection with, like Dean Faulkner, for example, or some of these other people at these different law schools, who is now dean at what school is it now?
Appalachian School of Law, I believe, is where he is right now.
Yeah, Appalachian School of Law. He's been at, Campbell. He's been at Liberty. He's bounced around some, but has been a referral source for us in the past, and I think is one of the reasons that we have a Tom who's working out of our Charlotte office, and really, I can name at least 4 or 5 that meet that definition. But yeah, I mean, all those parts that factor in together, and I think that's where social media, as we grow this thing, is a key. It may not be the exact key that we've always used before, though. So I think adaptability on some of this social media stuff could definitely be helpful for us moving forward.
Completely agree. It's as we've talked a lot about putting together our these offices. So what's so important is having good people, and that's one of the things that social media does. It allows you to get good people, and I really do believe that for instance, like you said, all your Facebook friends. The problem is that in order to make a dent in social media, you have to kind of do something that gets you out of that white noise of everybody else. And to me, I think the best thing to do is to just pick one social media and try to really push that. It is very difficult to stay engaged in the practice, especially when you have a thriving practice of law that you're also dealing with. And I think that there's a ways to cross that up. But I do believe that over time, that's going to become one of the things that we're going to be looking for. We're going to say, like, well, should we hire this new student? And of course, students don't have books of business to be able to bring to you. But if a student came and 2 students were otherwise completely equal, and one of them had 5,000 Facebook friends and one of them had 500 Facebook friends, that could be a factor for us, and say, like, oh my goodness, when they put in I'm thankfully accepting a position at King Law in their Charlotte location. They shoot that out to 5,000 people. That's a kind of a post that's going to get a lot of likes and a lot of thumbs up and all the things that are to it. It's quite an asset that a young student could bring, and those students are the same kind of clientele we're going to be looking for. What's going to happen when they're buying their first house or going through a divorce or getting child custody and those kind of things. They're going to look at that person, and I believe that is. It's difficult to think about how expensive it would be to do exactly what you're talking about. So, in a situation where we're trying to grow in, 15, let's say 17 locations across, we're looking at ways of how do we directly engage people, and that's what it is. That's what I like about your TikToks. It's very engaged, and you have turned that into an ongoing and lengthy conversation with your followers, and that's where that thumbs up is just going to continue going, and people are interested. What's next? What's it going to say next? And how's this conversation going to go? I'm really wrapped up in your TikToks, and I think that's an interesting way to get people. And I really noticed that a lot of your followers now are lawyers that are very interested in what you're doing, and you see this sort of interplay going on. And in a location like Charlotte, I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love that part of it. And I think that when, you get engagement out of that, it also makes, like for me, especially early on with TikTok, it's like, how do I come up with 2 ideas a day? How do I come up with 2 different things that I can do? But when you start getting that engagement, it becomes really, really easy. I mean, I did, it was taking me probably an hour per video when I started on TikTok. Yesterday, I did 3 videos in 12 minutes before my mediation started, but because I'm just replying to these engagements that I've had from other people that are great topics, that I just roll on for a minute, each. And, just basically the raw video. I mean, thanks to Delton's, critiques, I've cut the first and the end, and then I post it, and I put, just a title on there. sometimes not even a title, it's just the question or the response. But yeah, I think that is very true, and I know that the lawyer followers have increased for sure, which is I mean that's a referral source too. So for me it is. If I had a Georgia case, there's two that follow me that I follow. If we had a family law case in Georgia, they'd probably be my first calls. I hope that some of that would be reciprocal. So, and we do deal with stuff like that. So even kind of that frontline part, I think makes a difference there too. But I know we talked about keeping this shorter. Let's try to do like a 5 minute, just run through the updates. Because I know you have some. I don't have as many, but you've got some Asheville updates for sure.
Well, Asheville is really hitting it now. We have introduced Nick White as a returning attorney for us. They were yesterday whiteboarding it up. Jeannie and Victoria are now officially full-time in Asheville. So we now have, with Jeannie's experience just at King Law of 15 years, 30 years total, I think now that she has been in law firms. You have Victoria, who now has over a year of her own experience, even though she's still the young attorney and hungry and excited about building up her practice. Nick, who's got several years of experience coming from one of the biggest criminal defense attorneys in the state, that he left that firm to come back with us. That is a solid team that is full of appointments right now in Asheville. There's plenty of room to grow, but it is really cranked up. And in fact, it's cranked up so much that it's already had its first spinoff, thanks to Greg Newman, one of our attorneys who has been working a lot in Asheville and spent a lot of time in Haywood and Waynesville, which is going almost into the Tennessee area. He found someone who he said would be an excellent fit for us, got her signed up, and next week I'm going to be doing some interviews to get that office up and running, finding a location. So we'll have a fully operating Haywood County, Waynesville office that I am super excited about seeing what kind of growth we're going to get there. That's some pretty exciting things happening, and the revenue's rolling in as well. Jeannie, our case manager there, she was a little bit worried about a little bit of a drop off because she's coming from our HQ, our headquarters that generates so much volume for us. To go into the Asheville office, she was a little bit nervous. She said with the appointments and the retains that we have gotten, it's working well. So I've now have, I think, 4 attorneys spending a significant amount of time in Asheville, and I think that's the kind of thing that we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap. And it's not a close the book, but I think that Asheville is getting dangerously close to that $1 million, law firm by itself that we talked about before. I think that's a really good shot across, across to the other side at our Charlotte market. And I think we'll touch on it more next week, but I think I've got some return shots to throw back at you that I'm hoping we can give some updates on next week too.
Good. I'd like to put some numbers to what we're talking about. I think it'll really be at the end of this month before I'm able to really start looking at and saying like this is what exactly we're looking at. But I was very pleased with the numbers and the retains that we got last month, and really in Charlotte too. But Asheville was I think very strong numbers.
And I think this month is basically our timeline too. So, it's going to have to happen soon. I think we got 2 weeks left. I might have to double check on that, but I think that's roughly where we are. We haven't kept an exact count on that 90 and when we started, but we'll go back and do that too. But I do think there are plans there, and I think we've definitely seen some of that growth. And we promised to keep this thing short today, and I heard some crying upstairs. Sound like somebody may have got kicked. So let me go make sure that both of my children are safe and sound, but appreciate you joining us again. We'll be back next week with some more kind of final updates as we start wrapping this thing up.
use those mediator skills, and we'll see you next week.